What if you were a peasant in feudal Japan? Before we begin, what hour found you here tonight? Can't sleep, neither can many others. Drop your time below, I always read them. It begins with a sound, not a cry or a call, but something deeper, the rhythm of wooden pestles beating grain in a nearby hut, in time with the breath of the wind outside. It is the 6th hour before sunset. The light over the village bends gold through a thin curtain of smoke. Ash from the hearth, from the forge, from the forge. That moment stays. From the fire pit in your mother's belly, where the first stirrings of you were felt beneath her ribs. It is rice season, and the land hums with urgency. Your mother labours in silence, not because she lacks pain, but because pain is ordinary. The midwife wipes sweat from her face with the back of her sleeve. A crow calls in the cedar grove outside. Your father stands beside the door, head bowed, eyes closed, whispering to the mountain god not to take 2 lives today. A gust of wind sneaks through the slats in the wall and stirs the steam from the kettle. Outside, the sun slips behind the ridge, and inside you arrive. Not with a scream, not with fanfare. You arrive with a blink and a breath. They call you Shin. It means truth or faith or heart, depending on who's doing the naming. Your grandfather says it too softly to be heard, but he holds you with hands as weathered as rope. His thumbs are knotted with old labour. His knees creak as he bows toward the shrine. He dips his finger in a bowl of river water and touches it to your forehead. Your first bath is a rinse with smoke and cedar ash. They wrap you in old cloth, soft from 100 washings. Your eyes do not know how to focus yet, but they find the light seeping through the woven roof, where a single thread dangles from the thatch. It moves in the wind. You watch it as if it were a god. Outside, the drums beat faster. It is not a song for you. It is a song for the rice. It is a song for the rice. It lingers longer than expected, for the stalks rising in careful rows, for the farmers bent like bows, humming as they pass seedlings from one hand to the other. But you will learn that here there is no separation between rice and child. To be born is to be claimed by field, by family, by season. You are not separate from the land. You are its continuation. The days that follow are slow. Your mother binds your belly in linen soaked in herbs. She eats miso with pickled plum and drinks tea made from roasted barley. She sings while grinding millet, one hand on your back as you doze beside the fire. Your father doesn't speak much, but each time he passes the hearth, he looks down at you, nods once, and continues. One night he leaves a bowl of rice and a coin at the edge of the path leading into the woods. You do not see it, but you will come to understand that this is the way your people ask the spirits to stay kind. You grow beneath the scent of smoke, not the smoke of war or ruin, but the everyday smoke of life. It curls from cook fires in the morning, mixing with the sweet damp scent of rain on clay. It drifts from the kilns where your uncle makes jars for sake. It rises from the forge where your father hammers sickles and prays the blade won't split. There is always smoke, and within it you learn the difference between sacred and simple. Your first toy is a carved horse. Its legs are too long. The paint is chipped. It was once your father's. You drag it by a string across the packed dirt floor. You feed it grains of rice when you think no one is watching. When your mother dies your 6th winter of coughing that would not quiet you, place the horse beside her mat while the monk chants. No one moves it. Later you find it sitting by the shrine. Someone has tied a red string around its neck. By the time you are 7, your hands are calloused. You help carry buckets, feed chickens. That moment stays. Fold firewood under the awning. That moment stays. You are not praised for these things, they are expected. But one evening, your grandfather sits beside you after supper, nods toward your hands, and says, "They know the world now." And that is enough. At night, your dreams are filled with fields. You do not know why, you have never worked them yet. But in your sleep you feel the tug of roots, the pull of the earth's breath rising through your knees. The first time you step into a rice paddy for real, it is colder than you imagined. And somehow exactly right. Your father watches and says nothing. But when you rise, flecked in mud and shivering, he places his hand on your shoulder and leaves it there. You do not remember the moment when childhood ends. There is no drum for it, no ceremony. Only the first time you hear someone whisper, "The tax man comes soon," and feel something shift inside you, a coldness that does not belong to the wind. Only the first time you see your father's back turned and hear him sigh in a way that means he is older than his bones. Only the first time you are told not to play outside after sunset, because something has been seen in the woods, or the road, or the sky, and the sound of laughter becomes something to hold gently, in case it must be let go. You begin to understand silence, not as absence but as presence. There is the silence of your grandfather when he grinds wheat beside the hearth, the silence of your father when he sharpens a tool too dull to repair, the silence of your sister when she wakes before the sun, combs her hair with water from the jar, and slips out without breakfast. You learn that silence is not empty. It is filled with weight. It means respect, a coldness that does not belong to the wind. It means we are doing all we can. There is a shrine at the edge of the village, small, stone. That moment stays, covered in moss that no one scrapes away. Once a month, your family visits. You carry a bundle of twigs. Your sister carries rice. Your father carries a thin stick of incense. No one speaks on the walk there. No one needs to. At the shrine, your father bows twice, claps his hands, and bows once more. You imitate him. You do not know what God lives here. But later, when a neighbor's son breaks his leg and your father sends your only jar of vinegar to help, he says, "The gods listen more when we act than when we ask." One spring the river floods, not in rage, but in warning. The current climbs the bank and takes a shed, 2 baskets, and the bottom step of your neighbor's porch. Your father does not panic. He watches, then he digs a new trench before anyone else does. You and your sister carry the rocks. You're too slow. The sun bites your neck, but you do it anyway. And when the monk visits that week and gives his blessing, he touches your head and says, "Good soil holds." You don't understand yet, but you feel taller. You begin to notice the mountain, not just as shape, but as spirit. You watch it in the morning, how clouds kiss its peak. You watch it in the evening, how it disappears into dusk before the stars arrive. When people are sick, they speak to it. When people are lost, they walk toward it. When you ask your grandfather why, he says, "Because it does not ask to be worshipped. It simply stays." You do not forget this. You are 10 when your father teaches you how to split bamboo. It's for repairs, he says. It simply stays. And you do not forget this. But he doesn't stop you when you begin shaping one into a little sword. You practice in secret behind the shed. You swing wide, too slow, too dramatic. You knock over a jar of pickles. Your sister laughs. You laugh too. Later that night, your father carves a second bamboo stick. He holds it out to you, says nothing, and under the cherry tree where your mother used to sing, you spar gently in the fading light, neither of you pretending it is for real. A samurai passes through the village, not on horseback, on foot. He does not speak, but his presence swells like wind before rain. His blade is hidden, but every boy feels it when he walks by. You watch your uncle bow too deeply. You see your father's jaw tighten. You feel something for the first time, awe tangled with unease. That night, you try to carve your bamboo sword into something sharper. You cut your hand, and you understand that metal is not just for fighting, it is for hunger, for protection, for price. The rains come heavier the next year. A roof collapses, the grain spoils. Your sister cuts her foot and limps for days. There is no doctor. Only your grandmother's herbs and the steady warmth of fire. Still you eat, still you work, still you bow, because there is no virtue more praised in your village than persistence. And so you persist, even when your belly aches, even when your dreams shrink. You wake, you walk, you offer. And when the sun returns weak but steady, you bow to it too. You are 12 when you first feel old. Not because of pain, because you see your father's hair, and it is greyer than you remember. Because your sister no longer plays at night, but folds cloth with your grandmother. Because the boy who used to steal radishes now builds fences beside his father. Because you look at the field and you know how long it takes to plant it, and how long to harvest, and how long to plant again. Still the year turns, the snow falls, the fire burns, the seed waits, and in the quiet beneath the thatch roof, your chest rises and falls in time with the wind. You are not special. You are not a warrior or a monk or a poet, but you are here, and the land remembers you, not with song, but with breath, and that is enough. The field does not wait for you to grow. It greets you early, before your arms know strength, before your legs hold steady, before you understand much of anything about taxes or prayers or the way that rain can come too early or too late. You are 5 the first time your feet sink into the rice paddy. You expect solid ground, but instead you're swallowed by cool mud and water up to your knees. You take one step, then another, and fall. Your arms slap the surface. Your cheek hits the wet earth. You spit water and cry. No one runs to help you. Your father watches from the bank. Your sister is already waist deep in the next row, working quietly. She turns and nods toward you, a slow, half smile that says, "You're fine." This is how it begins. The rice field does not lift you. It teaches you how to rise. Mornings begin earlier now. Not with dreams, but with bowls of millet, half a fish, and a quiet nod from your grandmother to get moving. No one claps or calls, no rooster wakes you. The rhythm is set by breath and memory. Your sister laces her leggings before the sun crests the hill. The rhythm is set by breath and memory. Your father steps outside and scans the sky, not for color but for wind. He knows what the clouds do not yet say. You eat in silence. And then to the field. Always to the field. At first you only carry small baskets of seed, sloshing pails of water. That moment stays. A folded cloth to dry your sister's brow. You walk with the buckets until your arms shake. You stumble, and you stumble. You spill, and you spill. The adults say nothing. The adults say nothing. That moment stays. They do not correct you, the field does that. You learn which stones are stable and which sink. You learn where the path turns soft after rain. You learn that your breath should match your steps, or you'll drop everything. By your second week, you can cross the entire stretch without spilling a drop. You feel taller. Your father notices, but he says nothing. Planting begins before the sun warms the mud. The rows stretch long and perfect, drawn by calloused hands and careful eyes. You are not asked to make rows yet, that is sacred work. Instead, you squat at the edge, plucking tiny seedlings from bundles and passing them to your father. His fingers are quick, confident, quiet. He places each seedling as if tucking a child into bed. You try to copy him once and bury the green too deep. He pulls it up without anger. That moment stays, places it again. Not too proud, he says, eyes still forward. The root needs light too. You do not forget this. The water is a teacher. It moves slow, but without pause. It carries songs of the hill. It lingers longer than expected. Sometimes it brings frogs. That moment stays. Other times, it brings the bones of birds. You learn to watch its surface. The way ripples change when the gate upstream is opened. The way warmth brings algae and algae brings snakes. Water reveals everything. One day a neighbour's son throws a stone that startles a duck. The way warmth brings algae and algae brings snakes. Water reveals everything. The duck flaps wildly and scatters sediment into the channel. Your father watches it settle. Later he says, some people just like noise. But noise feeds no one. You begin to love silence. Your back begins to ache in your 6th week. It is a sharp ache, not dull alive hungry. It bites when you bend, lingers when you rest. Your arms tremble when you lift. Your feet squish with the smell of old rot and new life. You tell no one, because the ache is proof. Proof that the land is shaping you. And one evening, when the day's planting is done and you're wiping mud from your face with a reed towel, your grandfather places a salted plum in your palm and says, now you know the first truth. You wait. He adds, the earth gives you nothing until it knows your weight. The sun speaks its own language. At dawn, it says move. At midday, it says stop. At dusk, it says look. You begin to know the difference between a day that welcomes you and one that tests you. On some mornings, the dew clings to the stalks like forgiveness. On others, the wind feels like a warning. But no day is wasted. Not here. Even mistakes feed the next season. And one day, when you look down and see your reflection in the still water, you don't see a child. You see someone who has learned how to step lightly, how to listen, how to work without being asked. You touch the mud on your hands and do not flinch. You belong here, not because you were born here, but because you have earned it. You are 7 the first time you are trusted with a row of your own. It's narrow, crooked. Your father draws it with a stick and says nothing. You bow, then you begin. Seedlings in hand, you step forward. The water ripples with each motion, and the tiny stalks bend under your fingers as you press them into the earth just deep enough to root, just shallow enough to breathe. It is slower than you thought, harder than it looks. Your arms ache before halfway. Your back tightens, your knees shake, but you don't stop. No one praises you. No one shouts. But when you finally finish, standing ankle deep in water and mud, your sister glances over and offers a single nod. Your father wipes his brow with a cloth and hands you a slice of pickled daikon. Nothing is said, but everything is understood. The rice field is not just something you tend, it is something that shapes you. At midday you rest beneath the pine near the ridge. The bento your sister packed holds pickled radish, 2 onigiri wrapped in shiso leaves and half a boiled egg seasoned with salt and soot. You eat with your fingers. The wind smells like rain that has not yet come. Cicadas click in the trees. A dragonfly hovers, inspecting your chopsticks, then lands briefly on your shin. You stay still, letting it rest. Your grandfather used to say that if a dragonfly lands on you during planting season, it means your ancestors are watching. You want to believe that. So you do. The sun rises higher. Heat thickens in the air like a blanket draped over your head. The frogs have gone quiet. The water no longer ripples, it steams. But you keep planting. One step, one stalk, one prayer. By season's end, you can plant 3 rows in the time it once took to do one. Your hands are steady now. Your breath stays calm. You no longer slip, and you no longer slip. You know how to feel the slope of the land through your feet, how to detect the squish of air pockets or the smell of rot in the mud. You understand the moods of the soil, and when the last seedlings are placed, you look back and see rows straight enough to mirror the sky. Your father claps once softly before turning away. Good, he says. That single word carries everything you've worked for, but not every day is still. There are mornings when the wind arrives wrong, hot, sharp, dry, when the water runs too fast or stops completely, when frogs swarm and snakes slither through the channels, when the ox throws a hoof and crushes a tool. The field teaches on those days too. It teaches patience. It teaches humility. It teaches the futility of anger. One afternoon, thunder shakes the sky. Lightning cracks open the clouds and rain falls so hard it stings your neck. The paddy turns into a brown churn of liquid chaos. Seedlings float away. Stalks snap. You and your sister climb to higher ground and watch soaked as your morning's work is undone. Your father stands motionless beside a washed-out row. Then he exhales. No words, no curses. Just breathe. And the next morning, before the sun rises, he redraws the lines. You help. Of course you do. You're 8 when a man from the next village comes to trade bamboo tools. He squints at your shoulders and says, "That one will carry a cart alone by 15. You don't understand why your father's jaw tightens. Later, your grandmother tells you quietly, a strong back bends better than it breaks. But some will see it and think it means you never stop carrying. You sleep restlessly that night, dreaming of a field that never ends. But when you wake and smell roasted barley tea, the weight in your chest has lifted. Even the longest path has a turn. Even the widest field has a border. And you take it one row at a time. You are 9 when your grandfather dies. It is early in the planting season. The fields are only half set. The fields are only half set. That moment stays. His passing leaves a hush over the home deeper than any silence you've ever known. Your father does not cry. Your sister sings while making miso soup. Your grandmother burns cedar and wears white. You ask what needs doing. Your father hands you a hoe. So you dig, because mourning too is a lesson, and the field teaches it best. Later that summer, a new family settles in the western plots. Their son is thin, pale, with a limp. He doesn't know how to carry water or tie his sandals properly. The first time he steps into the mud, he shrieks and falls. You laugh. Your sister scolds you. Your grandmother frowns. The next morning, you carry a small basket toward him and show him how to press his heel before his toe, how to spread his weight so he doesn't sink. You say nothing. He says nothing. But he follows you. By the end of the week, he no longer falls. There are days when you wish to stay in bed, when the wind howls through cracks in the roof and the firewood is damp and your hands ache from yesterday's work. Days when you wonder if this is all there is, mud and sweat and silence. But you go anyway, because now you know rice is not just food, it is memory. Each stalk holds your grandmother's humming, your father's pauses, your sister's quiet laughter. Days when you wonder if this is all there is, mud and sweat and silence. It lingers longer than expected. It holds the smell of the cedar box your grandfather left behind. It holds the ghost of your mother's lullabies. It holds you, and in time you realize you are becoming part of the grain. Harvest arrives not like a festival, but like an answer, one you've waited months for. There is no celebration at first, no dance, no shout, no shout. That moment stays, just sickles sliding through stalks, the dull thud of bundles laid in piles, and the shared breathing of those who understand what the season has spared. And when the last sheath is tied and placed in the barn, you do not cheer, you do not run, you bow, because the rice grew, because the rain came, because you learned, because you endured, and that is enough. Spirits are everywhere. That is what your mother told you, long before you understood what the word spirit even meant. Before you knew how to read names, before you learned to plant a stalk of rice or tie your sandals properly, you learned to bow not just to people, but to places, to trees, to stones, to wind. The first time you visited the shrine beneath the cedar, you were small enough to be carried on your mother's back. Just sickles sliding through stalks, the dull thud of bundles laid in piles, and the shared breathing of those who understand what the season has spared. And when the last sheath is tied and placed in the barn, you do not cheer, and you do not run, and you bow. Because the rice grew, because the rain came, because you learned, because you endured. And that is enough. Spirits are everywhere. You remember the sway of her gait, the sound of her breath, and the occasional rustle of the charm bell she kept tied to her sash, a soft jingle that seemed to keep shadows away. The path was narrow, cut through tall grass and damp soil. Cicadas sang in waves. Cicadas sang in waves. That moment stays. Light filtered down in broken patches through the tall trees. And then you saw it. A small Tory gate. half covered in moss. 2 fox statues sat on either side, one with a paw raised, the other with a broken ear. The shrine itself was no bigger than a chestwood darkened by rain, roof curled from time, but it radiated something still, something ancient. Your mother bowed, so you bowed. She offered salt, and you watched her press her fingers together in prayer. When she finished, she placed a small rice cracker on the steps and whispered, "To the ones who listen." You never forgot that. As you grew, the shrine became a place of return. Not of refuge. You never went to escape. You went to remember, to ask, to thank. Your sister once tied a red ribbon to the foxtail after losing her bracelet. She whispered that the fox found it and returned it to her under her pillow. Your father never admitted he placed it there, but he also never removed the ribbon. In the village, spirits lived in everything. The stove had a spirit. The well had a spirit. The plum tree that bloomed each spring behind your house, that one was especially fussy, your grandmother said. You were told to place a pinch of rice flour on its trunk before harvest. And you were told to place a pinch of rice flour on its trunk before harvest, just in case. You learned to thank the fire before extinguishing it, to greet the river when crossing, to step around spiders, not because you were afraid, but because you were not alone. The shrine beneath the cedar sat higher than the fields, but lower than the mountain. No one claimed to know who built it. The wood was old, older than anyone living. The cedar that shaded it was enormous, thick-rooted and quiet, its bark rough like dried fish scales. Some said it was a shrine to Inari, the kami of rice and foxes. Others said it belonged to something older, something with no name. The monk who visited your village once a month never questioned it. He simply bowed, lit incense, and left offerings like everyone else. One summer the rain did not come. Week after week the fields cracked. Water in the channels slowed to a trickle. The frogs disappeared. Even the air began to feel dry in your nose. Your father walked with a deeper crease in his brow. Your sister stayed awake at night, listening for wind that never came. The villagers gathered at the shrine. The priest poured sake. Your grandmother offered beans and millet. Your father burned dried grass. When it was your turn, you stepped forward holding a single rice stalk from the previous harvest. It was the last saved in the house. You placed it on the step, bowed low, and whispered, "We're still here." That night the clouds gathered over the trees. By morning the fields were wet. And though no one claimed to know why you heard your grandmother hum as she lit the stove, a sound softer than any blessing. The monk was a quiet man with kind eyes and a bald head that glistened in the heat. He wore orange robes in summer and deeper red ones when the air grew cold. He never asked your names, but he always remembered your faces. Once he handed you a strip of paper thin as onion skin, with 4 kanji written in steady strokes. He said nothing, just placed it in your palm and nodded once. You never asked what it meant. You kept it folded in your sleeve for years until it dissolved in a wash basin by mistake. Still, you remember the way he handed it to you, as if he already knew the moment you'd need it most. As the years passed, the shrine beneath the cedar remained unchanged. But you changed. You stopped skipping up the hill. You stopped tugging at your sister's sash. You started lighting the incense yourself. And one autumn morning, after burying the family's old dog beneath the persimmon tree, you brought his collar to the shrine and left it there without a word. That night your dreams were filled with foxes, but not frightening ones. Just foxes watching from the shadows, their eyes like amber in the dark. You began to notice signs. A crow calling once instead of 3 times, a bamboo stalk bending when no wind moved, a fish leaping from the stream just as your father spoke your name. Nothing grand, nothing clear, just small gestures. The kind that meant something if you chose to believe they did. And you did, because the field may feed your body, but the shrine beneath the cedar that fed your spirit. You are 11 when you begin to visit the shrine on your own. Not just during festivals, not only when others go, but in the in-between hours at dusk, when the light turns grey and the village slips into stillness. You don't always know why you climb the path. Sometimes your feet bring you before your mind does. You carry nothing with you. No offering, no question, no reason, but the cedar still greets you with its slow breath. And the foxes are always waiting. It is early autumn. The leaves have begun to curl at their edges. The mornings taste of ash and smoke. Your sister says the wind has changed, and with it, the spirits will wake from their summer sleep. You kneel before the shrine and press your palms together. Your prayer is simple: let us remain. Not thrive, not prosper, just remain. Because by now you understand, enough is a sacred word. Your grandmother's hands begin to shake. She drops bowls, forgets recipes. She speaks to people who aren't in the room. One night, you find her outside at the well, pouring water into a cup for your mother, though your mother has been gone for years. She smiles and says, "She looked thirsty." No one scolds her. The next morning, your father lights incense not just in the house, but at the shrine. You go with him. This time you bring a lock of your grandmother's grey hair, wrapped in white linen. You place it on the step beside the fox statue, not as a farewell, as a marker. So the spirits will know where she came from when they come to guide her. At harvest, you see a bird with one white wing. It lands on the shrine roof, stares at you, then vanishes into the trees. That night, your grandmother passes quietly. You wake to the scent of sandalwood and barley tea. And you understand. The shrine is not just for asking, it is for witnessing. The monk returns a week later. He wears his red robe and carries only a wooden staff and a small drum tied to his belt. He kneels beside the cedar for nearly an hour. You watch from the edge of the clearing. He does not speak, only breathes. When he rises, he leaves behind a slip of calligraphy weighted by a single river stone. You wait until he's gone to read it. It says, "All that bends does not break." You do not know if it was meant for you, but you memorize the stroke of every character. Your sister weaves a small charm of rice straw and hangs it from the fox's ear. "Protection," she says, though she smiles. You return days later and find a frog sitting atop it. You take it as an answer. Winter arrives early. Snow drapes the cedar's limbs like robes. The shrine door freezes shut. Still, you go. Your father builds a small fence of bamboo to keep the fox statues from toppling under the weight of falling snow. You help him bind the corners with twine. "Spirits need shelter too," he says. And you nod. One evening, a merchant from the south comes to the village, carrying tales of war in the capital, of shrines being burned, of temples pillaged for gold. You lie awake that night thinking of the shrine beneath the cedar, of its roof warped by rain, of its foxes missing ears and tails, of the way it holds no treasure, just salt, rice, folded paper, and memory. You realize something. What cannot be stolen cannot be destroyed. You carve a small offering box from scrap wood. It takes weeks. Your hands blister. The blade slips more than once, but eventually it fits just under the fox statue's gaze. You place it there and say nothing. 3 days later, someone has left a dried persimmon inside. You do not ask who, because some answers are best left unclaimed. You are 13 when the monk places your hand on the prayer bell and says, "Ring it for them now." You don't ask who them is. You ring it. The sound rolls down the hill and brushes the treetops. You think you feel your mother's breath in the air. Spring returns with a whisper. Petals bloom along the cedar's lower branches, white and pink, so soft they look like breath turned visible. You sweep the shrine's step with a straw broom. You arrange 3 stones in a triangle by the fox's paw. You light incense, not because anything is wrong, but because nothing is. And that too is worth honouring. The shrine remains. Its wood splits further. Its roof sags. The moss creeps over the edge like a shawl pulled tight. But it stands. Because even shrines grow old. Even spirits grow quiet. Even foxes tire. But they do not vanish. Not when you remember. Not when you return. You are no longer small. The moss creeps over the edge like a shawl pulled tight. But it stands. Because even shrines grow old. Even spirits grow quiet. Even foxes tire. But they do not vanish. Not when you remember. Not when you return. And you are no longer small. Your hands are strong. Your back carries weight without pain. But when you bow before the cedar, you do it with the same reverence as your mother once did, with knees pressed gently to earth, with head lowered, with nothing in your hands but time. And that is all the spirits ever wanted. You are 10 the year the samurai's page arrives. He comes not with trumpets or commands, but quietly stepping into the village just as the morning sun lifts above the mountain. And your own back carries weight, without pain. But when you bow before the cedar, you do it with the same reverence as your own mother once did, with knees pressed gently to earth, with head lowered, with nothing in your own hands but time. And that is all the spirits ever wanted. And you are 10 the year the samurai's page arrives. He comes not with trumpets or commands, but quietly stepping into the village just as the morning sun lifts above the mountain. His robe is fine, though dusty from travel. His sandals are lacquered, his posture too proud to belong to anyone who plants rice. Children gather in the shadows of door frames. Women pause with baskets balanced on their hips. You stand beside your cousin under the eaves, holding a bucket still half filled with water. He doesn't speak. He doesn't have to. A stranger in a village like yours always means one thing: change. Your father meets the page near the shrine. You watch from a distance. The page bows stiffly, speaks low. Your father bows in return, but not deeply. You ask your sister what they're saying. She shrugs, probably about taxes. You want to believe her. But something feels different this time. The air tastes like iron. That evening after supper, Your cousin pulls 2 broken bamboo poles from behind the granary. Swords, he says. You raise your eyebrows. They carry them, he explains. So we should know how. You've never held a sword. You've barely seen one. Once a soldier passed through town, blade at his hip, and the entire village avoided the road for a day. But your cousin grins, one front tooth missing, and hands you the shorter of the 2 sticks. You grip it. You raise it. You feel something shift in your chest. Not power, not pride, just possibility. You fight in the dust behind the storehouse. At first, it's chaos, wild swings and laughter, 1,000 ha's shouted into the afternoon air. But your own cousin grins, one front tooth missing, and hands you the shorter of the 2 sticks. And you grip it, and you raise it, and you feel something shift in your own chest. Not power, not pride, just possibility. And you fight in the dust behind the storehouse. At first, it's chaos, wild swings and laughter, 1,000 ha's shouted into the afternoon air. But soon, something like rhythm emerges. You begin to anticipate his movements. You learn to parry, and you learn to parry. You block with the flat of your stick. You lunge, stumble, recover. By sunset, your arms ache and your cheeks are streaked with sweat. You don't speak of honor. You don't know that word yet. But something sacred dances just outside your grasp, and you chase it. Your cousin names himself commander of the grain forces. You name yourself wind under bamboo. The 2 of you spend days building a fortress from old baskets and dry stalks. You assign ranks to chickens. You make your sister swear loyalty. She breaks her oath 10 minutes later and declares herself Empress of all buckets. No one tells you to stop. Your father watches once, shaking his head, but smiling. That night, you wrap your bamboo stick in cloth and hide it beneath your mat. You whisper to it before sleep, "Tomorrow we conquer the West Paddies." The page stays longer than expected. He walks the perimeter of the village. He speaks with the elders. He counts oxen. He studies boys. You notice how his eyes linger on shoulders, on feet, on how quickly someone bends to lift a stone. He never watches you directly, but you feel measured, and that sensation of being seen by someone who decides awakens something uneasy in your chest. One morning you climb the ridge behind the cedar shrine. There, in the clearing, you practice. You swing your bamboo sword through the air with slow precision. You try to imitate the moves your cousin calls dragon coils and knee breakers. But you focus more than before. You steady your breath. Each swing becomes a breath. Each step, a heartbeat. And for a moment, just a moment, you feel something pass through you. Not a ghost. Something quieter, like respect. On your way home, you find a girl sitting by the river. You've seen her before, but never this close. Each step, a heartbeat. And for a moment, just a moment, you feel something pass through you. Not a ghost. Something quieter, like respect. On your own way home, you find a girl sitting by the river, and you've seen her before, but never this close. She's from the next village, the one with better pottery, but poorer soil. Her sleeves are rolled. Her hair is tied in a knot that's begun to fall. Beside her is a branch, shaped like a sword. She raises an eyebrow. You practice alone? You nod. She picks up her stick. Then let's practice together. You spar in silence. Her footwork is better. Your reach is longer. She strikes with grace. You respond with grit. The wind rustles leaves above you. A frog leaps from the bank. The river hums. The river hums. That moment stays. But you hear none of it, only the beat of sticks colliding, the sound of breath through teeth, the rhythm of motion matching motion. You don't know her name. You don't ask. But when you part ways, she bows one hand on her heart, the other on her stick. You return the gesture. Something changes in you. You walk home taller. Your cousin mocks you when you arrive with a bruised shin. Warrior of weeds, he calls you. But you smile, because you're not playing anymore. Not really. The game's taught you something. Not how to fight, but how to begin. You do not dream of battle. You dream of balance, of standing calm in a storm, of drawing lines in mud with your heels, then guarding them with breath alone, of holding still until the world moves around you. And always, in the dream's quiet end, a fox watches from the trees, not with hunger, but with knowing. You return to the riverbank often, not every day, not on schedule, but often enough that you start to recognize the rhythm of the girl's presence. Sometimes she arrives before you. Sometimes you arrive first. Sometimes neither of you speaks for several minutes. But always, eventually, one of you picks up a stick, and the air between you turns still. The fight begins without words. Each session brings something new, a feint she hasn't used before, a counter you didn't expect. Sometimes neither of you speaks for several minutes, but always, eventually, one of you picks up a stick, and the air between you turns still. The fight begins without words. Each session brings something new, a feint she hadn't used before, a counter you didn't expect. That moment stays. She uses angles, you use weight. She's fast, she's fast. That moment stays. You're careful. You trade scratches, bruises, grins. You don't keep score. There is no winner. Only learning. And that is enough. One day you bring her a gift. A carved hilt made from bamboo, sanded and shaped to fit onto her favorite practice branch. You say nothing as you offer it. She doesn't smile, not exactly, but her eyebrows lift slightly. She accepts it with both hands. She wraps the handle in cloth that night. The next day she moves like a whisper through the reeds. The samurai himself arrives 2 days later. You don't see him dismount. You only hear it, the sound of his horse, the jingle of metal, the silence that follows. Everyone pauses what they're doing. Even the dogs stop barking. He walks through the village like a shadow from another story. His armor is quiet, black lacquered plates and leather cords the color of dried blood. Even the dogs stop barking. He walks through the village like a shadow from another story. His armor is quiet, black lacquered plates and leather cords the color of dried blood. That moment stays. A pair of swords rest at his hip. A pair of swords rest at his hip. That moment stays. One long, one short. You do not look him in the eyes, but he looks at you. And for a moment, the field beneath your feet doesn't feel solid. That evening your father speaks to no one. He sits longer than usual at the hearth. One short, and you do not look him in the eyes, but he looks at you. And for a moment, the field beneath your own feet doesn't feel solid. That evening your own father speaks to no one. He sits longer than usual at the hearth. He sips his tea slowly. He sips his tea slowly. That moment stays. You can tell he wants to say something, but the words remain trapped behind his teeth. Your sister whispers, "Do you think they're choosing someone?" You don't answer. But in your chest, a knot begins to form. You meet the girl again the next day. She says nothing about the samurai, but her movements are sharper, her strikes more focused. Her stances hold longer. You fight for over an hour until your arms burn, until sweat rolls into your eyes, until your breath comes in gasps. And then you both stop at once, as if the same thought struck you at the same time. You sit in the grass. She unwraps 2 rice balls from a leaf and offers you one. You don't ask where she got them. You eat in silence, watching the reeds sway. "I heard they're choosing a boy," she says finally. You glance at her. Her eyes are on the water. You nod. She tightens the cloth around her sword and says, "Then well, keep training." You start waking earlier, practicing longer. You carve new targets behind the storage shed bundles of straw stacked in the shape of men. You strike them again and again until splinters fly. You rub pine oil on your palms to keep the blisters from cracking. Your father watches once, but says nothing. Your cousin watches twice, then calls you foolish. You don't respond. You just strike again and again. Then one afternoon the page returns. He gathers 5 boys from the village square, including you. And you rub pine oil on your own palms to keep the blisters from cracking. And your own father watches once, but says nothing. And your own cousin watches twice, then calls you foolish. And you don't respond. And you just strike again and again. Then one afternoon the page returns. He gathers 5 boys from the village square, including you. You stand shoulder to shoulder in the late heat, and you stand shoulder to shoulder in the late heat. The sun stings your scalp. The sun stings your scalp. That moment stays. Flies buzz around your ankles. The samurai stands beside a stump with a single bokken, a wooden practice sword. He points to it. "Show me," the page says. You step forward. You lift the sword. You remember the rhythm of the girl's movement, the way she breathes before each strike, the way her stance coils, the way she slides rather than steps. You move, you strike, you stop. The page nods. The samurai remains still. They do not choose you. They choose no one. The samurai leaves the next morning. You wake to find the road empty, the dust settled, and somehow you feel lighter. You meet the girl at the riverbank one last time that season. Neither of you mentions the visit. You spar briefly. Flies buzz around your own ankles. The samurai stands beside a stump with a single bokken, a wooden practice sword. He points to it. "Show me," the page says. And you step forward. And you lift the sword. And you remember the rhythm of the girl's movement, the way she breathes before each strike, the way her stance coils, the way she slides rather than steps. And you move. And you strike. And you stop. The page nods. The samurai remains still. They do not choose you. They choose no one. The samurai leaves the next morning, and you wake to find the road empty, the dust settled, and somehow you feel lighter. And you meet the girl at the riverbank one last time that season. Neither of you mentions the visit, and you spar briefly. Without fire. Without fire. That moment stays. without purpose, just to feel the familiar weight of the stick in your hand, just to hear the wooden thud of contact one more time. When you finish, you sit beneath the willow and watch a crane land in the shallows. You turn to her and ask, if they had chosen you, would you have gone? She thinks a long time before answering. I would have followed the sword, she says, just to feel the familiar weight of the stick in your own hand, just to hear the wooden thud of contact one more time. When you finish, you sit beneath the willow and watch a crane land in the shallows, and you turn to her and ask, if they had chosen you, would you have gone? She thinks a long time before answering. I would have followed the sword, she says, but I don't think the sword leads where people think it does. You nod, not entirely understanding, but believing her anyway. Autumn comes. You store the bamboo sword behind your mat. You still touch it now and then, not to practice, but to remember who you became while holding it. Not a soldier, not a warrior, just someone who learned how to move in the face of fear. The first frost coats the edges of the fields. Your cousin breaks his bamboo pole by accident and doesn't bother replacing it. You say nothing. The wind changes. The smell of harvest gives way to the scent of wood smoke and boiling roots. And in the evenings you sharpen knives instead of blades. You gather rope instead of courage. You look up at the stars and they no longer seem so far away, because you've already touched something unreachable once. It flickered, it warmed, and then it passed. But you remember. The smoke arrives before the rumours. You see it one morning rising from behind the hills that frame the eastern edge of your valley, a thin, dark ribbon against the pale sky, coiling slowly upward like incense from a forgotten offering. You pause with a bucket in your hand. Your sister stops plucking weeds. Even the chickens go quiet. It's too far to smell, too far to know, but close enough to feel. Something burns, and it is not a cooking fire. No one says anything that day, even the chickens go quiet. It's too far to smell, too far to know, but close enough to feel. Something burns, and it is not a cooking fire. No one says anything that day. It lingers longer than expected, not directly, but the elders walk slower. The monk visits the shrine twice. Your father eats with less rice and more broth. That night, he sharpens every blade in the shed, and not just the sickles for harvest, but the long, curved knife he keeps hidden behind the firewood. You watch the sparks as he works. Each one feels like a question thrown into the dark. By the third day, the wind shifts. The smoke becomes scent-sharp, earthy, acrid. It crawls into your nose, into your clothes, into your sleep. And then come the whispers. Another village taken. Bandits, maybe, or tax enforcers with soldiers. They took oxen and children. No one confirms, no one denies, the details don't matter. What matters is the edge. It's closer, and you feel it. A cart breaks near the well. The axle snaps, sending grain into the dirt. Your father curses not loudly, but with weight. The kind of curse that carries years behind it. You've heard him swear before when tools break or wood splits wrong. The kind of curse that carries years behind it. And you've heard him swear before when tools break or wood splits wrong. But never like this. But never like this. That moment stays. This is not frustration. It is fear, trying not to sound like fear. Your cousin asks if the samurai will protect you. Your sister answers before you can. They don't protect peasants. They protect landowners. They protect landowners. That moment stays. Rice, rice. That moment stays. Taxes, taxes. That moment stays. Temples. You stare at her. She shrugs. Temples. And you stare at her. She shrugs. We're none of those. Your neighbor, old Ichiro, begins sleeping outside with a spear made from a sharpened hoe. He says it's for foxes, but everyone knows the foxes are not the ones coming. You help your father tie bundles of rice straw into makeshift fences, not because they will stop anyone, but because they will buy time. And time now is a kind of currency more valuable than gold. The rice must still be sown, even now. And time now is a kind of currency more valuable than gold. The rice must still be sown, even now. That moment stays. Even with the sky stained and the air filled with tension, the seeds wait for no one. So you rise early. You walk to the paddies with a bucket in each hand. You kneel in the mud and press stalks into the soil with fingers that tremble only when no one is looking. Your sister works beside you, lips pressed thin. Your cousin jokes less. Even the birds seem hesitant, but the rows are made. And that too is resistance. At night, you hear a howl, not an animal, not a human, something in between. Your grandmother lights 3 incense sticks and places them in a triangle on the floor. Ghosts, she says. Your father does not correct her, and you do not sleep. You dream of fire, not as destruction, but as movement. Fields burning in patterns, flames forming words you cannot read, a figure walking through it all, untouched, leaving footprints that smoulder long after. You wake before dawn, sweating. The smoke still lingers in the wind. Then, one morning, they arrive. Not bandits, not samurai, collectors. 2 men with lacquered hats and calm expressions. A figure walking through it all, untouched, leaving footprints that smoulder long after. And you wake before dawn, sweating. The smoke still lingers in the wind. Then, one morning, they arrive. Not bandits, not samurai, collectors. 2 men with lacquered hats and calm expressions. Their sandals are too clean for travel, their sleeves too wide for work. They do not smile, they speak only to the headman, but everyone watches. You stand beside your sister, arms crossed, heart in your throat. One collector holds a scroll. He reads from it as if the words matter more than the faces around him. Taxes have increased, he says, due to instability, due to necessary protection, due to your location. No one argues, because to argue is to vanish. The monk offers them rice wine. They refuse. Instead, they mark each house with a charcoal line on the doorpost. A tally. You are 3 lines. You don't know what that means. But your father's hands tighten on the basket he's holding. After they leave, no one speaks for hours. Only when the sun begins to dip does your father finally speak. We give what we must. Your sister says nothing. Your cousin spits in the dust. You stare at the doorpost. And suddenly the world feels smaller. That night, your father gives you a task. You watch the road, he says. He hands you a bell, thin and rusted, tied to a cord. If anyone comes, you ring. You nod. He doesn't explain further. He doesn't need to. You sit near the edge of the village, under the persimmon tree, bell in your lap, ears straining with every breeze. The moon rises, the stars blink awake, and you wait, not for sleep, not for morning, but for something you hope never comes. You sit under the persimmon tree, cradling the bell in your lap. It is your first night on watch. The stars blink above you, scattered and silent. The moon is thin, a broken bowl in the sky. Wind brushes through the grass, but carries no voices, no hoof, no footsteps. Still, you listen. You don't yawn, you don't stretch. You barely breathe, because something has shifted not just outside, but inside you. And once a boy begins to listen for danger, it is hard to unhear the world. By morning, you haven't rung the bell. Your father finds you with your eyes open and your hands clenched too tight around the cord. He says nothing, just takes the bell, nods once, and walks away. You know you'll be out there again tonight. The days blur. Each morning you go to the field. Each evening you eat beside the hearth. Each night you take your place beneath the persimmon tree. You sleep less. You speak less. You startle at crows. One evening your sister brings you a folded cloth inside it, a rice ball and a plum. She doesn't say it's for the watch. She just places it on your knee and leaves. The next time you return from your post, there's a new mark on the doorframe. It's not charcoal. It's cut, carved, deep and deliberate. A single slash across one of the collector's tally marks. You don't ask who did it, but you catch your father later rubbing his knife with oil. His eyes don't meet yours. In the village square, voices grow louder. No one speaks plainly. No one calls for rebellion. But you hear the sharp edges of fear turning into anger. They want rice. Let them come, plant it. What protection? We haven't seen a sword lifted in our name. Let the collectors bleed like we do. The monk says little, but he prays longer at the shrine. The fox statues gather dust. No one wants blessings now. They want justice, or at least fairness. But even children know fairness is not a thing that travels down the road in the hands of a taxman. You start hearing stories. Not from strangers, from your cousin, your sister, the boys in the paddies. Stories of fires spreading, of rice being burned instead of taken, of collectors returning with bruises and broken fingers, of a man who disappeared after refusing the tithe. You ask your father if they're true. He stares into the fire and says, "Truth is in what people do next." You think about that all night. You do not sleep. The smoke never fully leaves now. Sometimes it fades, becomes a smear on the horizon. Other times it thickens a curtain you can't see through. One morning ash falls like snow. Only a few flecks, but they land on your cheek and stay. You take to carrying a stick, not as a toy, not to pretend, but because your hands feel empty without it. You carve the grip yourself. You wrap it in cloth. You sand the tip. It is not a weapon. It is not a tool. It is a line, one you can draw in the dirt if needed. And defend. One night, your sister doesn't come home. Not before supper, Not before moonrise. Your father asks nothing. Not before moonrise. And your own father asks nothing. Your cousin volunteers no news. But your heart starts drumming in your ears. Just when you're about to leave to search, she walks in, dusty, wind-blown, her hair falling from its tie. She doesn't speak. She places something on the table, a blackened tooth curved and sharp like it came from a boar. Or something worse. We're not the only ones preparing, she says, and goes to sleep. The next evening the bell rings. You don't ring it. Your cousin does. His younger just started his watch. But his voice cracks like thunder. Fire, not smoke. Fire. You run. Everyone runs. To the ridge, to the edge of the paddies, to rooftops and hills. And you see it, at last. Not a thread of grey, not a whisper, but fire. Not a whisper, but fire. That moment stays, real, near. It crawls over the next ridge like a wave made of teeth, orange, hungry, fast. You do not wait. You do what you were taught. You dig ditches. You wet cloths. You move baskets. You help your father bury the tools in a trench behind the house. Because if it comes, you'll need to rebuild. Not fight. Rebuild. But the fire stops. Not by magic, not by wind, by the river the line holds, for now. But you watch the glow all night, and you know the world has changed. In the morning the rice must still be sown. The water still flows, the birds still sing. You step into the paddy. Your knees sink into the mud. Your hands grip the seedlings, and you press them into the earth one by one, with care, because the only answer to a world trying to burn is to grow something in its place. Winter does not knock, it creeps. You do not wake to snow. Fast. And you do not wait, and you do what you were taught, and you dig ditches, and you wet cloths, and you move baskets, and you help your own father bury the tools in a trench behind the house. Because if it comes, you'll need to rebuild. Not fight, rebuild. But the fire stops. Not by magic, not by wind, by the river. The line holds, for now. But you watch the glow all night, and you know the world has changed. In the morning the rice must still be sown. The water still flows, the birds still sing. And you step into the paddy, and your own knees sink into the mud, and your own hands grip the seedlings, and you press them into the earth one by one, with care. Because the only answer to a world trying to burn is to grow something in its place. Winter does not knock, it creeps. And you do not wake to snow, you wake to silence. Breath becomes fog. The roof grows brittle, the wind speaks in longer vowels. The frost claims the vegetables first, not in one sweep but in waves, not in one sweep but in waves. That moment stays. The leaves turn silver at the edges. The stems go soft. The stems go soft. That moment stays. The roots hold out longest, but they surrender too. You kneel in the field with your sister, unearthing what's left. Soft carrots, frozen radish, a few wilted greens. She tucks them into the woven basket, tight and wordless. You don't speak. She tucks them into the woven basket, tight and wordless. And you don't speak. You only watch the garden go still. The smoke from every hearth in the village thickens. Even the monk's incense curls slower. A neighbour's ox dies in the night. A neighbour's ox dies in the night. That moment stays. Another neighbour vanishes and no one asks why. Death in winter is not news. It is expected. Your breath leaves white ghosts behind when you wake. The mat is stiff. The walls leak. The wind slips through cracks and circles your ankles. Your sister shivers beside you and pulls her blanket tight. Your father rises before dawn and does not remove his outer robe even inside. The water jar freezes at the mouth. You strike it with a stick to break the ice and drink from your hands. You pray more often now, not because you want favor, but because you want company. The shrine is colder than the house. You kneel anyway. You press your palms together and whisper nothing, because the gods already know. You do not light incense. You do not leave rice. You leave warmth, the kind that leaves your chest when you bow, and doesn't return until you rise. And some days that is all you can afford to offer. The cedar groans in the wind. The fox statues gather frost. You brush the snow from their backs when you pass. Not because they need it, because you do. Inside, the days stretch longer than outside. Time passes in firewood and miso, in threading needles and stirring ashes, in counting knots in the floor mat, in mending broken sandals with strands of straw you twist from loose thatch. You learn the shape of hunger, not just in your belly, but in the way you count footsteps between meals, in how your sister watches the fire as though it could feed her, in how your father sharpens dull blades because it gives his hands something to do. Hunger is a shape in winter. It follows you everywhere. You sew. You never thought your fingers would know a needle better than a planting stalk. But here you are, pulling thread from an old robe, repairing the lining in your sandals, your sister's sleeves, the hem of the mat by the door. Your grandmother once told you that every stitch holds a prayer. You hope she was right. You hope prayers can be worn thin and still hold. The birds leave. The frogs vanish. Only the crows remain. They perch on the dead persimmon tree, black against the white sky. They do not caw. They do not caw. That moment stays. They simply watch. You stop throwing stones at them. They have their own work to do. A child falls ill. Not your sister, not your cousin. A boy from the edge of the village. You don't know him well. He has red cheeks and quiet eyes. He used to whistle while walking. Now he doesn't walk. The monk visits with a bowl of boiled ginger. You and your father carry a basket of firewood to his family's door and place it beside the threshold. You say nothing, but you hear his mother cry behind the wall. You wake one morning to find your sister already up, sweeping the floor with a branch broom. She doesn't look at you, but she hums a song your mother used to sing. You hum along, quietly, and the room feels warmer for a moment. You find your cousin sharpening a stick with a broken knife. He tells you it's to scare away ghosts. You ask if it works. He says, no, but it keeps my hands warm. You nod. You understand. A heavy snow falls. The weight collapses a shed roof, but it keeps my hands warm. And you nod. And you understand. A heavy snow falls. The weight collapses a shed roof. The chickens freeze in their coop. The chickens freeze in their coop. That moment stays. Your father breaks a toe hauling water from the stream. Still he works. Still the fire is fed. Still the rice is rationed. You eat half a bowl and give the rest to your sister. She pretends not to notice, but she does. That night, as the wind howls and the fire dims, your father places a bundle of straw beside the hearth. He says, "For the gods." You watch it burn. It smells like earth and hope. The cold deepens, not in one night, but like a tide, steady, relentless, relentless. That moment stays. Each morning your breath lingers longer in the air. Each night the wind claws a little deeper into the roof beams. The pail by the door cracks from frost. The stream near the shrine slows to a whisper beneath a skin of ice. And still you rise before the sun, because the fire must be fed, because the boots must be patched, because the living do not wait for warmth to return. They keep going. Your sister begins talking in her sleep, sometimes only murmurs, sometimes full phrases from nowhere. She says it's too heavy, or the door didn't close. You wake with her hands curled into fists, her eyes shut tight, her brow damp with sweat. Your father doesn't ask what she dreams, but he places a charm near her mat the next day. You do not touch it. The shrine becomes difficult to reach. The path is buried in white. The snow reaches your knees. The wind tries to turn you back with every step. But you go, because the foxes are waiting, because the cedar stands even when the rest of the world bows. You clear the snow from the steps with your sleeves. You do not bow. You kneel, and you whisper, "Just one more week." The monk returns in silence. His robe is heavier now, patched and lined with fur. He speaks less than before. He walks with a cane, but his eyes are still kind. He offers dried mushrooms and a pouch of salt. He walks with a cane, but his eyes are still kind. He offers dried mushrooms and a pouch of salt. That moment stays. Your father offers him shelter for the night. He accepts. At dinner, no one speaks until your sister coughs. The monk places his hand on her back and says nothing. But later, she sleeps without thrashing, and the charm on her pillow glows faintly with heat. The monk leaves the next morning, before the sun rises. You find a folded square of paper where he sat. On it, the kanji for breath. You hang it by the door. The wind doesn't enter for 3 nights. Your cousin builds a sled from scrap wood. It doesn't work, but the attempt makes your father laugh, the first real laugh you've heard in days. Deep and short and startled, as if it caught him by surprise. Your cousin shrugs and says, "Next one will fly." You help him drag the broken sled back up the hill. You don't say it, but you're proud of him. Because defiance, even in the form of laughter, is a kind of heat. A fox is seen at the edge of the fields. Its coat is too bright for the season. Its eyes reflect lantern light even when there is no moon. Your sister says it's a blessing. Your cousin says it's a test. You say nothing, but that night you leave a rice ball near the cedar. By morning it's gone. You don't look for tracks. You only bow before turning away. Supplies dwindle, the miso pot scrapes bottom. The last dried persimmon is split 3 ways. You chew each bite for twice as long as needed, as if time itself could stretch flavor. Your father begins boiling bark with bones. Your sister grinds stale grain into porridge. And still the wind bites through every crack. You consider burning the straw mat, but don't, because it's the only thing separating your knees from the earth, and you're not ready to pray that hard just yet. On the coldest night of the season, the lantern blows out while you're sleeping. The dark wakes you, not fear, dark, real dark, the kind that has weight. You lie still, listening to the groan of the house, the creak of the trees, the breath of your sister, and one more sound, a soft tapping, outside, like cloth against wood. You rise, you step carefully, quietly. At the door, you press your ear to the panel. Tap, tap, tap. You open it, no one is there. But on the ground, barely visible in the moonlight, are 3 perfect footprints. Barefoot, small, facing the shrine. You don't speak of it. Not to your sister, not to your father. But you begin sleeping with the charm tucked in your sleeve. And each night before you lie down, you whisper into the fire, "I'm listening." One morning the snow melts, just a little, enough to expose the tips of last year's straw, enough to let water flow under the ice at the stream, enough to make the crows call again. Your sister opens the window for the first time in weeks. "Smells like air," she says, and you nod. Because the end of winter doesn't come in sunlight. It comes in scent. You count the days until planting. You prepare tools that have no edge left. You gather rope that frays in your fingers. You measure rice down to the grain, and you wait. When the first shoot pierces the thawed mud near the fence post, your father doesn't tell anyone. He just stands beside it for a long time. Then he calls for you. You come. You kneel. You look. And you see it. One green thing. Pale, bent, brave. You nod. And return to the house. Spring is not a season. It is an agreement. Between the sky and the soil. Between the breath and the body. Between you and the gods. It says you may begin again. For one night, the world softens. The air smells of sweet smoke and pine ash. Paper lanterns bob along the fence posts like drifting moons, red, white, gold glowing from within like fireflies caught in celebration. For one night, hunger steps back, grief steps aside. Winter closes its door, and the village remembers what it means to gather. It is the Lantern Festival, and it begins with music. You are 12, and the memory of frost still clings to your sleeves. Your sandals are patched twice over, and your own sandals are patched twice over. Your hands still ache from chopping firewood, and your own hands still ache from chopping firewood. But tonight, your skin is clean, your robe is mended, and your belly has been promised rice and bean paste dumplings. Your sister has been humming for days, stringing tiny bells onto her sleeves. Your cousin has carved a flute from bamboo. Your father, tired, quiet, always watching, combed his beard before leaving the house. This is not a new year, not a harvest, not a birth. It is simply a night when the village chooses joy. The first lantern you hang yourself, It's small, no bigger than your palm. You painted it earlier that morning with a brush made from horsehair and twine. The strokes are uneven, a mountain that leans, a fox with too many tails, but your sister tied a red string through its handle and said it would keep evil away. You light it with a coal and watch it bloom. Its glow is not strong, but it is yours. At dusk, the music begins. A drum beats low and slow, calling the villagers from their homes like seeds rising from the earth. The strokes are uneven, a mountain that leans, a fox with too many tails, but your own sister tied a red string through its handle and said it would keep evil away. And you light it with a coal and watch it bloom. Its glow is not strong, but it is your own's. At dusk, the music begins. A drum beats low and slow, calling the villagers from their homes like seeds rising from the earth. A shamisen joins it, 3 strings plucked soft and fast. Then voices, children singing the old chant, light come home, leave no soul alone. Your feet move before you decide to follow. The main path is lined with food stalls. They're simple straw mats, fire pits, clay bowls, but their smells make your stomach growl. Sweet rice cakes shaped like flowers, grilled fish on sticks, pickled plum on white radish, a pot of miso bubbling with seaweed. You hold a single coin in your hand, sweaty from your palm. You buy a dumpling and eat it in 2 bites. You do not regret it. A girl walks past in a blue robe you've never seen. She carries a lantern shaped like a fox. Your eyes meet for a moment. You look away, too fast, but you feel the heat in your ears long after. Games are played, a spinning top challenge, a pot of miso bubbling with seaweed, and you hold a single coin in your own hand, sweaty from your own palm. And you buy a dumpling and eat it in 2 bites, and you do not regret it. A girl walks past in a blue robe you've never seen. She carries a lantern shaped like a fox, and your own eyes meet for a moment, and you look away too fast. But you feel the heat in your own ears long after. Games are played, a spinning top challenge, a contest to catch fireflies in jars, a contest to catch fireflies in jars. That moment stays. Your cousin bets on beetles. Your sister plays a rhythm game with pebbles and wins a ribbon for her sleeve. You win nothing, but you laugh more than you have in weeks. The shrine is decorated with lanterns of every colour. Dozens hang from the cedar tree, swaying like memories in the wind. You climb the steps with your sister and place a pinch of salt on the offering tray. She adds a folded paper wish. You ask what it says. She smiles. If I tell, it won't come true. You press your palms together and whisper, let everyone stay. The monk stands beside the fox statues, ringing a bell every few minutes. Not for prayer, for rhythm. He watches the crowd with soft eyes and sways slightly to the music. Someone gives him sake. He bows and drinks. You think it is the first time you've seen him smile. The fire dance begins after dark. 3 young men step into the circle, each holding a torch wrapped in wet cloth. She adds a folded paper wish, and you ask what it says. She smiles. If I tell, it won't come true. And you press your own palms together and whisper, let everyone stay. The monk stands beside the fox statues, ringing a bell every few minutes. Not for prayer, for rhythm. He watches the crowd with soft eyes and sways slightly to the music. Someone gives him sake. He bows and drinks. and you think it is the first time you've seen him smile. The fire dance begins after dark. 3 young men step into the circle, each holding a torch wrapped in wet cloth. They chant not words, just breath made wild. One tosses his torch high, another spins his like a wheel, another spins his like a wheel. That moment stays. The third places his against his chest and lets it burn down to his palms before flinging it away. The crowd gasps. You feel your heart lift. Not with fear, with awe, because they are not showing off. They are honoring. And everyone watching knows it. Your sister pulls you toward the river. Lanterns float there, dozens of them, each a wish written on rice paper, folded around a flame, set gently into the current. You write yours on the back of a rice scrap. Not poetry, not elegance, just, please keep us warm. You fold it tight. You set it afloat. And you watch it drift with the others, light wobbling on the water, like a breath made visible. Someone touches your sleeve. You turn. It's the girl with the fox lantern. Up close, she's taller than you expected. She doesn't speak. She just hands you something, a second lantern, smaller, painted with waves and wind. Then she turns and disappears into the crowd. You look down at the lantern in your hands. It's lit. You don't move for a long time. The sky is fully dark now. Lanterns float not only along the paths and river, but in the air paper globes strung from bamboo poles, glowing like stars that chose to stay close to the earth. The village has changed. For this one night, it has softened at the edges. The usual rules bend, the voices are louder, the eyes shine brighter. Even the trees seem to sway with more rhythm. You clutch the small lantern the girl gave you. The waves painted on its sides look hand-drawn, careful, deliberate. You trace the brush lines with your thumb. You don't know her name. You don't know why she gave it to you. But you hold it like a secret, one that doesn't need to be understood to be treasured. Your sister finds you again by the food stalls. She's flushed from the heat of the crowd and the taste of something fried and sweet. In her hand, a prize, a fan painted with a crane in flight. She flicks it open with a snap and dances it in front of your face. Try to win one, she says. They're giving them away if you can catch a fish with paper. You grin, but shake your head. They're giving them away if you can catch a fish with paper. And you grin, but shake your own head. You don't want to chase anything tonight. Not fish, not games, not even luck. You just want to hold this feeling as long as you can. The music swells again from the main square. Another shamisen joins in. A low drum begins a new rhythm. A low drum begins a new rhythm. That moment stays. Someone starts singing, an older woman with a voice like polished wood, and others hum along. It's not a song of war or prayer. It's a song about moonlight on rice fields, about lovers hiding behind bathhouse doors, about growing old with someone who still laughs at your jokes. Your father stands at the edge of the crowd. He leans against a post, arms crossed, face unreadable. But he's not tense, just still. You wonder what he's thinking, and you wonder what he's thinking. You wonder if he's remembering your mother. You wonder what he sees when he looks at lanterns instead of debt, rice instead of duty, music instead of silence. A gust of wind blows through, scattering ash from a nearby brazier, and you wonder if he's remembering your own mother. And you wonder what he sees when he looks at lanterns instead of debt, rice instead of duty, music instead of silence. A gust of wind blows through, scattering ash from a nearby brazier. Sparks flutter upward and disappear. Sparks flutter upward and disappear. That moment stays. You hold your lantern steady, shielding the flame with your body. And you hold your own lantern steady, shielding the flame with your own body. It flickers, then steadies. It flickers, then steadies. It lingers longer than expected. You exhale. You walk toward the riverbank again, past couples holding hands, old men sipping sake and laughing from their bellies, children darting between legs with lanterns tied to their wrists like leashes for stars. You pause near the stone bridge where more lanterns wait to be set afloat. A boy from the next village tips one too hard. And you pause near the stone bridge where more lanterns wait to be set afloat. A boy from the next village tips one too hard. It spills over and extinguishes. He cries. His sister kneels beside him and lights a fresh one. No scolding, no tears, no tears. That moment stays, just patience. You watch it drift away and wonder what wish it carries. The girl is there again. Just patience. And you watch it drift away and wonder what wish it carries. The girl is there again. The one with the fox lantern. This time, you see her before she sees you. This time, you see her before she sees you. That moment stays. She's talking to the monk who listens with a tilted head and the hint of a smile. Her lantern hangs from her wrist now. She gestures as she speaks, confident, animated, like someone used to telling stories and having them heard. You wait until she's alone. When she turns, you're there. She gestures as she speaks, confident, animated, like someone used to telling stories and having them heard. And you wait until she's alone. When she turns, you're own there. She notices the lantern in your hands, the one she gave you, and nods, as if to say, good. You kept it. You summon every piece of courage you have and say, thank you. She doesn't laugh. She doesn't look away. She says, do you want to walk? You say yes. You walk. You don't talk at first. You just walk the perimeter of the festival, past the food, past the musicians, past the dancers. Your footsteps crunch on gravel and snow-crusted earth. The lanterns sway above, casting light that shifts across her cheekbones and nose and collar. Finally she speaks. I saw you last year. The lanterns sway above, casting light that shifts across her cheekbones and nose and collar. Finally she speaks. I saw you last year. That moment stays. You carried your sister when her leg hurt. You gave your dumpling away. You blink. You hadn't known anyone noticed. She shrugs. And you gave your own dumpling away. And you blink. And you hadn't known anyone noticed. She shrugs. I remember things. You nod. I remember your fox lantern. She smiles. I lost it. It blew into the river. It blew into the river. It lingers longer than expected. I thought it would float, but it didn't. You both laugh. The music fades behind you. The sounds of the festival become muffled, distant like remembering a dream while still in it. She says, I'm leaving in the spring. You look at her. She doesn't look back. My uncle has land near the mountains. He said there's work there. A mill. A roof. You want to say something. Anything. Instead you say, that sounds big. She nods. Anything. Instead you say, that sounds big. She nods. That moment stays. It is. You reach a patch of open earth near the edge of the field. It is. And you reach a patch of open earth near the edge of the field. No one else is here. Just the stars. Just the wind. She places her lantern on the ground. The flame inside it dances wildly for a moment, then calms. You do the same with yours. She sits. So do you. For a long time you both say nothing. Then, quietly, she reaches out and touches your fingers with hers. Not a grasp. Not a hold. Just contact. Simple. And everything. You sit there with her in the silence, the two of you lit only by two tiny flames and the glow of the stars. You do not speak, because some moments are too full to hold more words. Later, when the music rises again and the fire dancers prepare for their second performance, you walk back towards the square. You don't hold hands, but the space between you feels lighter, and your chest feels full. Your sister sees you and raises an eyebrow. Your cousin winks. Your father says nothing, but the corners of his mouth twitch upward when he looks at you. The final act of the festival is the grand release. Everyone with a lantern walks to the river. Together they kneel, light their flames and place them on the water. You watch 1,000 tiny suns drift into the dark, casting golden lines across the surface, like paths to another world. You place your second lantern last. You do not write a wish. You do not need to. The girl stands beside you, and you are warm. He arrives in silence. No horns. Together they kneel, light their flames, and place them on the water. And you watch 1,000 tiny suns drift into the dark, casting golden lines across the surface like paths to another world. And you place your own second lantern last, and you do not write a wish, and you do not need to. The girl stands beside you, and you are warm. He arrives in silence. No horns, no guards, no drums at the edge of the path to announce his entry. Just a shadow slipping between homes, his sandals tapping against dirt with the soft rhythm of a man used to walking where people do not welcome him. He does not bow, he does not smile, he does not knock. He is the tax collector, and today he remembers your village. You are 13 when you first see him up close. He's older than your father, but not by much. His robe is clean, but worn thin at the elbows. He wears no sword, only a pouch tied with red cord and a narrow book tucked beneath his arm. He does not speak as he moves through the village. He does not raise his voice. He gestures once to the elder, who nods, and then begins walking from home to home, with the elder 2 paces behind. At each door, he pauses. He makes marks in his book. He steps inside. He does not stay long. And when he leaves, the faces behind the doors do not watch him go. They lower their eyes and close the doors before his shadow can fall across the threshold. He does not ask. He measures. You watch him kneel by the rice sacks near the granary, lifting each bundle with a careful, clinical hand. He presses on the sides, he smells the grain, he taps the wood of the crates and listens to the echo inside. You wonder what he hears. You wonder if hunger sounds like anything at all. When he reaches your home, your father greets him with a low bow. Your sister stands inside, hands behind her back, eyes downcast. You stand beside the hearth, where the fire has been allowed to die. The collector says nothing. He walks inside, runs a finger along the beam over the window, checks the pot beside the stove. Your father unties the bundle of rice without being asked. He places it in the center of the room. The collector squats and lifts it. It's light. You can see it in his face, the subtle twitch of his cheek, the bare movement of his jaw. Still, he writes something in his book, ties the sack, and hands it back. Your father bows again. The collector leaves. You don't realize you've been holding your breath until the door closes behind him. The elder comes an hour later. He speaks quietly to your father at the door. You cannot hear the words, only the weight of them. When he leaves, your father places his hands flat on the table. Your sister looks at you, and no one speaks. Not for a long time. That night, dinner is roots. Your sister boils them with pickled radish and salt. The broth is thin. The bowl is small. You eat slowly, chewing until the taste turns bitter. No one complains. No one asks why, because everyone already knows. Your uncle visits the next day. He doesn't bring fish like he usually does. He doesn't greet you with a laugh or a slap on the back. He doesn't greet you with a laugh or a slap on the back. That moment stays. He just sits outside with your father, two men hunched over a debt that will not be spoken aloud. You bring them tea. Neither thanks you. They do not sip it. They just hold the cups as if the warmth alone could buy them more time. You see the collector twice more before he leaves. Each time he says nothing. Each time he takes something. Dried persimmon from the Cato house, 3 bundles of straw from the goat shed, a child's blanket from the home where the newborn still sleeps in a basket. He does not ask. He only measures. On the 3rd day he vanishes. No goodbye. No record left behind. Just the memory of sandals on packed earth, and silence, thick as snow, settling in his wake. Your uncle does not return. Not that day, not the next. You hear that he was seen walking toward the river, that he carried nothing, that his sandals were left behind near the stone bridge. No one goes to look. No one asks you to. But your cousin doesn't speak for 3 days, and your father works later into the evening than usual, hammering boards that do not need fixing. Silence becomes a language. You begin to hear what it says. It says, "This will not end soon." It says, "Say less, move slower, hide better." It says the gods may be watching, but they're no longer intervening. You stop asking questions at dinner. You stop mentioning empty jars. You stop pointing out when things are missing, because everyone already knows. And speaking would only make it more real. The monk returns with a small bell tied to his walking stick. He does not ring it. It's only there to remind people that he can. He prays at the shrine longer than usual. He replaces the fox charm that someone took during the collector's visit. He writes a prayer on your door. Stillness is not surrender. Your father lets it stay. Even when it begins to peel from the cold, you walk to the cedar shrine one night and find your cousin there. He doesn't speak when you arrive. He's just sitting, knees drawn up, eyes on the fox statues. You sit beside him. After a long time, he says, "I think I hate sandals now." You laugh once. Then he says, "But I hate the silence more." You don't answer. You just sit with him, Two boys waiting for the frost to break, hoping that next time the footfalls in the dirt belong to something other than debt. You learn to recognize the silence before it arrives. It settles into the rice fields long before footsteps fall. It bends the reeds and dries the air. It bends the reeds and dries the air. It lingers longer than expected. It moves through the trees without disturbing the branches. A stillness that hums, not peace, not calm, but preparation. As if the land itself braces for weight it has no choice but to carry. In the days after the tax collector departs, you count everything. You count the rice in the jar. You count the knots in the firewood stack. You count the bowls that still have no cracks, the sandals without holes, the winter pickles that haven't gone soft. Not because you need numbers, but because numbers give the illusion of control. When you know what you have, the world feels less likely to take it from you. Even if it will, even if it already has. Your father stops speaking in the mornings. He wakes before the sun, washes his face with water so cold it burns, sharpens the tools without a word. He eats last. He sleeps last. His silence is not cold, but carved like a beam that holds a roof without asking for praise. You imitate him. You begin to do things before being asked. You carry water without spilling. You seal the grain jars tighter. You fold your sister's robe before she wakes. And the silence around you says more than approval. It says you're learning. The collector does not return, but his absence remains. A hole shaped like a man who took more than rice. Your neighbor begins selling rope by the handful. Another offers to sharpen knives in exchange for sweet potatoes. The family near the river starts walking to the next village with baskets of reed mats and comes back with less than they left with. No one complains. They trade with words like, enough for today, better than nothing, maybe next moon. The shrine is quiet. Even the foxes seem subdued. You sweep the steps on your own now. Your cousin joins you sometimes. Your sister folds paper prayers into tiny triangles and hides them in the cedar's roots. The monk hasn't returned since the last snowfall. Your father says he's visiting another village, one deeper in the forest. You wonder if the silence found him too. One afternoon you follow your cousin to the edge of the village. He shows you a spot where the road bends behind the hills. This is where he first appeared, he says. You both stand there for a long time, staring at the dirt. Nothing marks the place. No footprint, no shadow, but you feel it. A memory in the soil. You ask your cousin, would you run if you had to? He looks at you, then at the sky. Maybe, but I'd want to know where to run to. You nod. That night, you study the stars, just in case. Your sister makes ink from soot and water. She writes something on the inside of the doorpost in a language only she knows. When you ask what it says, she replies, "It's not for reading, it's for reminding." You never ask again. The hunger sharpens, not enough to kill, not enough to steal, but enough to make the air feel thinner, enough to make sleep feel shorter. The last radish is divided 3 ways. You eat yours slowly. You don't chew. You let it dissolve. You convince yourself the flavor will last longer that way. It doesn't. You overhear 2 elders speaking behind the shrine. One says, "Hell be back in the spring." The other answers, "If he comes with swords next time." well, have nothing to offer but our backs. They both go quiet after that. You slip away before they see you, and for days afterward, you dream of walking barefoot along a road lined with sandals. The next time it rains, you stand outside. Not to feel clean, not to feel renewed, but to be reminded that some things still fall freely from the sky. You open your mouth and let the water collect on your tongue. It tastes like wood smoke, but it's still rain, and that means something. The snow begins to melt, a sign of spring, but also a warning. The paths will become clear again, and with clear paths come visitors, not all of them welcome. You tie new knots in the fence by the paddies. You repaint the tally marks on the door with water, pretending they'll wash away. You start listening for footsteps before they arrive. And one morning, when you hear none, you walk outside anyway, just to feel brave. The collector's silence taught you many things. It taught you that value is not always visible, that survival isn't loud, that fear wears many shoes. But most of all, it taught you this: silence is not empty. It is full of everything you couldn't say, everything you still carry, and everything you promise yourself you'll never forget. One night, your father speaks. You are sitting by the fire, tying rope from old straw. He says, "Hell return." You do not ask who. He says, "Well, have less to give." You nod. He says, "But well, still give." You ask why, and he replies, "Because what we do not give, they take." And you let it dissolve. And you convince your own self the flavor will last longer that way. It doesn't. And you overhear two elders speaking behind the shrine. One says, "Hell be back in the spring." The other answers, "If he comes with swords next time, we'll have nothing to offer but our backs." They both go quiet after that, and you slip away before they see you. And for days afterward you dream of walking barefoot along a road lined with sandals. The next time it rains, you stand outside, not to feel clean, not to feel renewed, but to be reminded that some things still fall freely from the sky. And you open your own mouth and let the water collect on your own tongue. It tastes like wood smoke, but it's still rain. And that means something. The snow begins to melt, a sign of spring, but also a warning. The paths will become clear again, and with clear paths come visitors, not all of them welcome. And you tie new knots in the fence by the paddies, and you repaint the tally marks on the door with water, pretending they'll wash away. And you start listening for footsteps before they arrive. And one morning, when you hear none, you walk outside anyway, just to feel brave. The collector's silence taught you many things. It taught you that value is not always visible, that survival isn't loud, that fear wears many shoes. But most of all, it taught you this: and silence is not empty. It is full of everything you couldn't say, everything you still carry, and everything you promise your own self you'll never forget. One night, your own father speaks, and you are sitting by the fire, tying rope from old straw. He says, "Hell return," and you do not ask who. He says, "Well, have less to give." And you nod. He says, "But well, still give." And you ask why. And he replies, "Because what we do not give, they take. And when they take, they do not stop. You let the rope fall into your lap. You stare at the flames. And you understand. Some silence is heavy because it's carrying what came before. But some is heavy because it's waiting for you to speak. You begin practicing with the stick again. Not to fight, but to remember how to stand. How to breathe with your heels grounded. How to look at a road and not flinch. You do not imagine victory. You only imagine enduring. And in this place, that is enough. The man came at dusk. Not with fanfare, not with smoke or noise or the hurried steps of warning. He simply appeared on the road between the eastern paddies and the shrine path, moving as though he had always belonged to the horizon. He wore grey, faded cloth with travel stains on the hem. His sandals were frayed. His sandals were frayed. That moment stays, his hair tied with twine. But the swords were flawless. But the swords were flawless. That moment stays. One long curved blade at his left hip. One long curved blade at his left hip. That moment stays. One shorter, tighter to his ribs. Both wrapped in black lacquered scabbards that caught the last light of sun like still water. He paused at the well, bent low, drank with both hands. 3 times.